Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2018 thriller stroke drama Charlie Says, a film that is directed by Mary Harron, who also directed American Psycho, and it stars Matt Smith, the former Doctor Who Matt Smith. We have Hannah Murray as Leslie Van Houten, and Hannah Murray you'll recognise as Gilly from Game of Thrones. We have Saucy Bacon as Patricia Greenwinkle, and we have Marianne Randon as Susan Atkins, and we also have Merritt Weaver as Carleen Faith. Now this is a retelling of the Charles Manson story, but from the perspective of the three women that I've just mentioned there, who were incarcerated for life sentences for the atrocious crimes that they did at the beck and call of Charles Manson in 1969. Charles Manson is back in the headlines at the minute with, all this stuff with the Tarantino film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and the Sharon Tate stuff. It's all being stirred up again, so the subject matter's out there again, so hence why I think we're getting some of these new retellings of the tale. Now, like I've said, this is done from the perspective of these three women in prison, and essentially we see them being interviewed or taught by like a school teacher in the prison, who is there to educate the women in the women's prison, and she's the only one that'll go near these three. They're kind of in this solitary department of the prison by themselves. They don't want to mix with the general population for fear of what might happen, and these girls are still completely and utterly brainwashed by Charles Manson. They think, he's still wonderful and they can't see any wrong in what they've done, and this teacher wants to try and get through to them, so she starts slowly making connections, and as she does, they talk to her quite openly about what happened with the Charles Manson family from the early beginnings, where it was all good times and it was all free loving and fun and happiness, and how it slowly twisted to the obviously dark end to the chapter that we all famously know. Now, this film, I think, it feels almost like a TV movie. I'll say that right off the bat. It's well made. It's got a good cast. Everybody gives very good performances, and Matt Smith is decent enough as Charles Manson. He's certainly got the look. However, my understanding is that Charles Manson was quite a small guy, and Matt Smith is quite tall. So in regards to stature, it doesn't kind of stand up in regards to his look for Charles Manson. But what he does have that look and stare occasionally throughout the film, and he does a fairly admirable job in the part. The three girls here, when they're being interviewed in prison, it's quite a frustrating film to watch in a lot of ways. It's almost like the Zac Efron film that was on Netflix recently, which was a well-made film, but it was a frustrating film also, and it's almost like these girls are telling their story, and you get frustrated because it's telling it all from their perspective and not necessarily from the perspective you want, in a sense of you don't want this glorifying. And I'm not saying it feels like it's glorifying it. At times it does a little bit, but by the end it's quite effective, in a sense of when she starts getting through to these girls and the realization of what they've done and the repercussions of what they've done, and the reality that they were brainwashed by this man. It gives you an emotional, some emotional satisfaction by the end, I think, but it is quite a frustrating film to watch for the most part. They don't glorify the violence. It is, by today's standards, reasonably tame in most areas. It gets a little bit graphic by the end, but fans of horror certainly will have seen far worse than this. So I don't necessarily think it glorifies it, but I don't think it goes enough in depth either into the story of Charles Manson himself, which is understandable because it's being told from a different perspective, but you're not told anything about his upbringing, his youth, his childhood, and how he got to where he was in 1969. The film kind of just opens with it there on this ranch, this family, and him brainwashing them all into thinking he's some kind of incredible leader that they all need to follow. So while this film isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, it is ultimately very, very watchable, and it's fascinating, and it's littered with some impressive performances. Hannah Murray, I think, is quite standout, as is the teacher, who is played by Merritt Weaver. Both give very, very good performances, and Matt Smith is certainly pretty good in the lead role as well. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It's an interesting watch. I'm not sure it adds anything new to the story of the Manson family, but it's out there, and it's certainly watchable, and it's well made, and it does it from a different perspective, so it has its own merits. So that is my review for Charlie Says. I hope you enjoyed it, and of course, if you did, click the like button, and if you're new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on Screen Stars.